Dragon Age Veilguard versus 4790K. How well does it run? Let's find out. First, the specs on my machine, of course 4790K. We got 32 gigs of 1866 megahertz RAM. We have two SSDs. One has Windows 10 Pro and the other one has the games on it, and it's also the SSD that the footage is recorded on. And last but not least, we have the 6800 non-XT AMD reference card. For the graphics settings, we are running uncapped frame limits. VSync, triple buffering, anti-aliasing, and frame generation are turned off for all of these runs. We will be running the canned low, medium, high, ultra, ultra with full ray tracing, and finally my custom settings in these benchmarks. MSI Afterburner is used for the statistics, and they are shown at the top left corner, with the top row showing the GPU with the temperature, load, and VRAM usage, the processor with the temperature, load, and clock speed, total RAM usage in the third row, and last but not least the FPS with the current, average, and 1% low. Now I came across a section where I saved the game that was easily replicatable, and there was a single enemy at the end, so I could keep everything roughly the same. Now, if you enjoyed these type of videos, please consider subscribing. Still trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. You guys would be a great help. Now, let's get to the meat of the video. First up, the canned low setting. In this run, we maintain between 70 and 80 FPS. Even at this low setting, the game does not look bad at all. VRAM usage is at 8078 megs, and utilization peaked at 79. The processor is running close to 100% utilization throughout. This is the case for every run, so I won't make a mention of this again. RAM is almost a near perfect 16 gigabytes here. The run ends at a 79 FPS average with a 1% low of 57. Second, the canned medium setting, which punches up the detail a fair bit. FPS during this run varies greatly between the highs of 80 plus and dipping into the 50s for the first time during the combat section. GPU usage is at 8139 megs and utilization peaked at 86% earlier in the run. The run ends at 75 FPS average and a 1% low of 51 FPS, which is a loss of 4 and 6 FPS in those categories versus the previous low run. Now the canned high setting. This is where the game starts to shine and the detail and lighting really start to pull it together. This is also the first time where VRAM usage is pushed beyond the 8GB mark at 8339 megs, and the utilization saw a peak above 80%.
Another central construct. We'll have to take it down.
We mostly see 50 to 60 FPS ranges, but it did end up dipping into the 40s during the combat scene. The run ends at a 63 FPS average and a 1% low of 38, a loss of 12 FPS and 13 FPS versus the previous medium run. Things get interesting at Ultra. Again, detail sees an uptick. This is the first canned setting where ray tracing is turned on. The screen is filled with more background and shading. The game mostly runs in the 40 to 50 FPS ranges, while the VRAM usage on the GPU is now well past the 8GB mark at 8893 megs.
Another central construct. We'll have to take it down.
GPU utilization now routinely hits the 90s, and the run ends up at 54 FPS average with a 1% low of 33 FPS. A loss of 9 FPS and 6 FPS versus the previous high run. Because we are gluttons for punishment, we do the Ultra run with all the ray tracing options turned to the highest setting and Ultra ray tracing turned on. VRAM usage has also hit the 5-digit mark at this stage, and RAM is above 16GB usage as well. The game runs in the 30 to 40 FPS ranges, and this is the first time it truly felt sluggish to me.
We'll have to take it down.
The run ends at a 39 FPS average with a 1% low of 23, a whopping 15 FPS and 10 FPS loss versus the previous canned Ultra run. Now lastly, my personal settings, which are essentially the canned ultra setting with the ray tracing and motion blur turned off. This setting mostly runs in the 50 to 60 FPS ranges here, with VRAM at 87-81 megs.
Another central construct. We'll have to take it down.
The run ends at 59 FPS average and a 37 FPS 1% low, which is an improvement of 5 FPS and 4 FPS over the canned Ultra run. Looking at the starting screenshots, you can see a clear difference between the low, medium, high, and ultra setting, with the ground detail and shading increasing. Now the game is of course a lot more diverse than what I just showed you in these benchmarks. I have a few clips here that show you how my machine handled everything on my personal settings. I'm not going to be talking through it, so you can really take everything in and keep an eye out on the stats and see if that is something that you could live with if you have roughly the same specs as I do.
We have to stop this demon quickly.
Watch the lightning!
How did demon this large get through the veil?
It's a pride demon. Damn thing probably sensed Solus's ego.
Constructs! It means I was right.
Right about what?
About where we are. It's an armory. And I think I know what the artifact is. Right side! Excellent form, Rook! An archive spirit.
A what?
A creature of the Fade, bound to a crystal. Ancient elves use them to store knowledge and to help them dream. Methalinast. Darkspawn. Right side. Darkspawn. Here. I never would have believed it. Until today.
I really believe the game does run very well, but for the sake of transparency, there were 2 instances where my machine really didn't know what to do anymore. And I have those clips here as well.
Damn! Another sentinel construct. We'll have to take it down.
during my regular gameplay, I've also found out that the game will sometimes stutter in a very similar way, although it is way less pronounced. Of course, my PC is below spec, my processor is 100% below spec, so when it comes down to recording on a machine that is below spec for a game, you already know what happens. There's just not a lot of resources going around, and eventually the PC is just going to go, okay, what am I supposed to do now? It didn't crash the game though, which I really enjoyed, because most of the time when something like that happens, it crashes the PC, the footage is gone and everything else, and right now I could share it with you guys, which I'm really appreciative of. Another thing you have to deal with is compiling shaders. This took 25 minutes on my PC the first time I started the game. The second time it would just do the checking of the shaders, which was about 5 minutes. It's still a long time, but not as long as 25. However, the next day, today actually, in the moment of filming, I got back into the game to check some settings and everything else, and I had to wait 25 minutes again. So every single time the game updates, that's probably what's going to end up happening. You have a lower end processor, and that is just something you have to deal with. So go in knowing that, so you have something else to do, and then you can come back to the game later when it is fully loaded up, because it's kind of annoying. Now, if I'm completely honest, I don't like it, because if I want to play a video game, I want to play it right now. But I'll just deal with it because, well, I got older hardware, and that's just them chops. You know, you run all the hardware, you run into these issues. On faster processors, it is not going to be a case. You can see in all the benchmarks that I did that the processor is pretty much pegged, is very GPU heavy. You cannot get around that. So if you have a low-end processor, the wait times are just going to be a little bit longer. Now, when it comes down to the conclusion, 4790K really does still work, and you can still have a great experience with it. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, hashtag game for the sake of gaming, and I will see you guys in the flip side. And don't forget to subscribe. I would really enjoy seeing more of you commenting also, because that's one of those things that I really enjoy, seeing all the comments and really interact with you guys, keeping that conversation going. Take care.